Hey guys, it's Dr. Justin Marcagiani here. Today we are going to talk about cravings. Why do you have cravings and what you can do about them? All right, before we dive in, please smash that like button as well. Put your comments down below. Let me know what you've done to help address and neutralize your cravings. And again, if you're enjoying the content, please share it with family and friends. All right, let's dive in. So cravings, what are the big driving factors behind cravings? So there's a couple of big things. Hormones and blood sugar are going to be one thing that really has a major effect on cravings. The other is going to be neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters play a major role on cravings, and then obviously learned behavior and habits play a big role as well. But again, a lot of times those behaviors and habits are driven from the neurotransmitters and driven from the hormones. So first thing, what's the big hormonal fluctuation that's going to have major effects on your cravings that affects most people? Most people, it's going to be a combination of blood sugar swings and or insulin resistance. Okay, so one common pattern of blood sugar issues is a pattern called reactive hypoglycemia. So this is essentially when your blood sugar goes up and then down, up and then down, up and then down. Let me just make one little note here while you guys are waiting for me. So with blood sugar issues out of the gates, when your blood sugar goes up, you're going to make a whole bunch of insulin at the top here. Okay, this is going to be one thing that happens at the very top. And then at the bottom, you're going to see a blood sugar crash. When your blood sugar crashes, this is where you make a whole bunch of cortisol and adrenaline. They play a major, major role on creating jitteriness, anxiety, and picking back up your blood sugar out of the gates. One sec here. Adrenaline. When we have high levels of insulin, chronically high levels of insulin, first thing it does, it creates cravings. High levels of insulin chronically will create cravings. The second thing that does, it prevents you from burning fat for fuel. So think of fat as like your stable source of fuel. Let's say you're camping, right? You put log on the fire, nice solid log on the fire, maybe a little bit of kindling to lit it. That is going to be like your fat in your body. So imagine you're next to that campfire and you're trying to get that fire going for a long time with, let's say, twigs and paper and kindling. Well, it's not going to last long. You're going to be chronically feeding it. Let's say your fire is going to be chronically craving that fuel to keep it going. And it's not like a log where you can put it in and you're good for like maybe 4 or 5 hours. You're constantly every 10, 15 minutes having to feed it. And that's a lot of people's metabolism. They're chronically set up to have to feed their metabolic fire. High levels of insulin, it's very difficult to feel satiated when your insulin levels are chronically high. Think of that as insulin resistance, prediabetes, and diabetes. And then think of people that are on this high and low blood sugar roller coaster. That's the reactive hypoglycemic pattern. That's the high to low swing, right? Insulin resistance is more going to be just staying high, but it can still drop. Obviously, diabetes, it's chronically up. And then, of course, the insulin resistance, the reactive hypoglycemic swing, this is going to accompany a lot of mood issues, a lot of lightheadedness, dizziness, jitteriness, a lot of cravings on the high or on the high to low drop. So that's really one big component there. Females are going to deal with a lot of cravings premenstrually, especially when there's imbalances in progesterone. Progesterone plays a major role in GABA and in very powerful anti-inflammatory for the brain, very important mood stabilizer. Progesterone opens the GABA chloride channels in the brain, which really help kind of put the brakes on the nervous system. So it really helps put the brakes on stress. It opens up GABA chloride channels, which help you to feel relaxed. So progesterone, a lot of women, they take it primarily at night. Take it in the morning, it relaxes them too much and makes them tired. So progesterone plays a major role with stress and relaxation and craving. So a lot of women, that last half of the cycle, that premenstrual period, a lot of times they'll be craving a lot of magnesium, right? And they'll go for chocolate because magnesium is very high in chocolate. Or they'll have a lot of cramping. Magnesium is very helpful for cramping. So a lot of times lower progesterone levels and the need for certain nutrients like magnesium, you can have a lot of cravings premenstrually, primarily predisposed by lower levels of magnesium, lower levels of progesterone, and that extra need for GABA. Okay, and GABA kind of follows in that neurotransmitter camp. So GABA is the brake on the nervous system. So number 3 is neurotransmitters. GABA hits the brake on the stress response. So it helps you to relax. it promotes relaxation. So we have the sympathetic part of the nervous system, the autonomic system, which is going to help gas. It's going to be go, 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 stress, 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 stress. The parasympathetic will be the relaxation, rest, and digest. And so GABA helps put the brake down so we can slow down the car and then get the parasympathetics going on. That's really, really important. So when we get the parasympathetics going, that helps with serotonin and dopamine. And they kind of intermingle with GABA. Explained to me many times that serotonin and dopamine play a higher role than GABA, but GABA definitely would have an influence because it decreases the stress response. And when you're stressed, you're going to burn through more serotonin and dopamine. So serotonin is an amino acid that's made by 5-HTP/tryptophan. And then dopamine is going to be made by tyrosine and phenylalanine. And of course, dopamine can also become a stress neurotransmitter. It can also become epinephrine, norepinephrine, or adrenaline, noradrenaline, right? Same thing. And so that's why when you're chronically stressed, you can deplete dopamine. So easiest thing to do when you're stressed is fix your stress, whatever that stress is. And then you can also take specific amino acids. So I have a blend called Brain Replete that has 5-HTP and tyrosine in there, 10-to-1 ratio in regards to tyrosine to 5-HTP. So 1 gram of tyrosine to 100 milligrams of 5-HTP. No water, so a little sticky. All right, so amino acids play a big role. Serotonin, dopamine, adrenaline all play a big role. Chronic stress is going to deplete your serotonin. It's going to deplete your dopamine. So you have to look at what the underlying stressors are. If you're just reaching for amino acids like this and you're not fixing the underlying issue, not good, okay? So you want to get to the root first. That's important. And a lot of people, it's going to be diet issues. It's going to be inflammation in their food. It's going to be blood sugar swings. It's going to be unresolved emotional stress, maybe not getting enough sleep, maybe eating a nutritionally poor diet, like not getting enough magnesium. All these things play a role. So make sure your diet stress is good, food stress is good. Make sure you're doing your best to manage things emotionally, good communication in your relationships. Make sure you're managing work stuff. And then if you want to use this on top of that, it's better. First, don't just reach to this in general. It's still better than reaching for medication that have, greater side effects and don't actually get to the root issue. That's somewhat root cause as long as you address the stress. All right, so we use amino acids like that. We use 5-HTP, we use tyrosine. Also important cofactors are going to be methylated B vitamins. So, and most importantly is B6. Pyridoxal 5-phosphate plays a major, major role in helping to synthesize. It's an important rate-limiting cofactor for neurotransmitter synthesis. And then, of course, folate and B12 are important for methylation because your neurotransmitters have to be methylated. That's simple. That's nothing more than attaching a carbon and 3 hydrogen to whatever that process is. Okay, so I hope that makes sense there. And so methylation plays a big role. Vitamin C and also calcium, magnesium can play a big role with neurotransmitters as well. So if you're having a good multivitamin there in the background and a decent whole food paleo template, and then you're adding in the neurotransmitter support, amino acids, you should be covered out of the gates as long as stress isn't so out of this world, and as long as gut function, there's not significant impairments in the gut. Again, if you have chronic gut issues, digestive issues, absorption issues, you gotta look deeper at the gut for sure. And again, 99% of serotonin is made by your gut. So if we have poor gut function, a lot of chronic inflammation, it's going to play a major, major role in helping to absorb all those nutrients that you need to help that brain work better. So that's, really important component out of the gate. So I hope that makes sense and hopes that helps you out here, guys. If you want to dive in deeper and work with someone like myself, a colleague like myself that is trained in dealing with neurotransmitters, hormones, and try to get to the root cause of why you have those stress cravings, those mood craving issues, feel free to click down below. Happy to help you and make sure you get the support you need. And if you enjoyed the content, put your comments below. Give me a thumbs up. Make sure you share it. I hope you guys enjoy the content and can take one thing and start applying it to your daily routine to get healthier. Again, this is Dr. J here signing off. Let me dive into a couple questions. Let's see what we got here. I'm going to keep it on the topic of cravings, and we'll see what we got. Okay. What about cravings from street drugs? So same thing. So street drugs, what they're doing essentially, it's like using credit cards to pay for something that you do not have in the bank, all right? But it's a bigger debt. It's not like a small debt, it's a big debt. It's like you buying a car, or maybe a car's not a good analogy, but you buying things that you don't have the money for. Eventually, you have to pay that debt back. Well, what you're doing with a lot of these drugs that are out there, whether they're, let's just keep it to like uppers, right? Let's keep it to like methamphetamines, stimulants, cocaine, Adderall, right? They are going to overstimulate your body. And through that stimulation, right, they are going to produce excess dopamine, excess serotonin through the stimulation. So think of it as whipping a tired horse. Eventually that horse is going to need a nap, and it's going to need a really long nap, and it's going to need to recover. And so you're burning the candle at both ends with street drugs. So eventually you're going to need a good diet. You're going to need to figure out why you were using those drugs to begin with. Was it just for fun? Like, some people do drugs because it literally makes them feel normal. Okay, that's a different situation. You have to really work on healing the brain with nutrients and a good diet and amino acids to bring your level back to baseline, because your baseline's lower. If you're doing drugs because it's an extra bump, well, we have to look at constructive and destructive vehicles. Drugs are destructive because in the long run, you feel a little bit good, but in the long run, it breaks you down. So you just got to find more constructive vehicles. I like adaptogenic herbs. I like B vitamins. I like amino acids to make yourself feel better, focus better. Those are my favorite things out of the gate. So you got to get to the root issue. And then, of course, why did you do the drugs to begin with? You got to look at unmet, your 6 important human needs that Anthony Robbins talks about, right? The 6 big human needs: certainty, uncertainty, love and connection, significance, contribution, and growth. Those are your 6 human needs. And so a lot of times when drugs come about, you have to look in the area of love and connection and significance to make sure your needs are being met. We want to make sure the nutritional foundation is there out of the gates, and we have good, healthy biochemistry that's stabilizing everything. So when you work on any psychological stuff, it's on a good foundation of a solid psychology, right? Imagine going into therapy or dealing with a stressful situation, not having slept all night. You're not going to have the fortitude within your brain, within your neurology to deal with it, right? So you need a healthy neurology, a healthy physiology, biochemistry through nutrition, healthy lifestyle habits to be able to take all that in. Hope that helps. What are your thoughts on a carnivore diet as far as hormones and blood sugar swings, being that it's a zero carb diet? I mean, I think for people who have such a stress response to the anti-nutrients that are in vegetables or low sugar fruit, it makes sense. I don't think it's necessary for most people. I think vegetables, especially if they're cooked or steamed and easy to digest, and you can break them down and you're able to assimilate them, and it's not stimulating some weird autoimmunity or inflammation, carnivore diet's not necessary. For people that have that anti-nutrient sensitivity and or have a weird autoimmune issue that is being exacerbated by those plants, then I think it's smart. But either way, I think it's a good step in the right direction as long as the animal products are nutrient dense and pasture fed is much better. Question, shiitake mushrooms have the same amino acid as meat. Is that true? So you have to look at the amount. So a plant will never have the same amino acid concentration as meat. Okay, so just for instance, 6 ounces of grass-fed beef, right? People will say, oh, the protein content in kale is really high, right? The problem is they're talking about a relative percentage, okay? So we have to talk absolute percentage, because relative percentage in plants does not matter because the calorie content in non-starchy plants is really low. So you have to look at absolute content. And if you go look at the amount of protein that's in 6 ounces of grass-fed beef, guess how many cups of kale you'd have to repeat it? 16 cups, okay? So vegetables, when it comes to amino acid content from an absolute level, they're far inferior and less bioavailability and less complete amino acid profiles than animal products. And of course, animal products, you have the bioavailability much higher, especially if you can cook it much better. So that's the benefit of animals, right? Remember, cows are eating tons of grass, and they're bioaccumulating that to make their meat more nutrient dense. And you don't quite get that with grain-fed. Fasting 20 hours a day, 2 days in a row, helped me with cravings as well as increased protein and decreasing carbs. Yeah, I mean, that's fine. I mean, the thing you have to look at when you're fasting that long is you are putting blood sugar stress on your body in regards to a low level of blood sugar. In a short-term kind of punctuated fashion, like 2-3 days, probably fine, probably not a problem, right? But long-term, it's going to be difficult. The problem with people that are doing a lot of this prolonged fasting stuff, unless it's a specific intermittent fasting protocol and you're getting enough nutrition in that 6 to 8 hour compressed window, eating window, then you're kind of on a low-calorie fad diet, and that we know how that works. We know the research shows that it doesn't last because your body's eventually going to succumb your willpower. Okay, let me keep on rolling on this. Okay, let me keep rolling here, guys. Yeah, so if you have chronic drug use, you really have to be like, if you have chronic drug use, uppers, downers, a lot of chronic use there, you have to have a healthy diet, healthy digestion. You have to cut the sugar out. Almost all drug addicts, when they're coming off, like if you ever witness like an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting, it's literally people drinking caffeine-laden coffee at 8 o'clock at night, smoking endless cigarettes, right? Nicotine. What does nicotine do? It stimulates dopamine. Drinking lots of caffeine, especially late at night, lots of caffeine, lots of dopamine stimulation as well. And also it's affecting your circadian rhythm. And then usually there's passing around some kind of pastry or bagels. Again, I used to try to do talks at some of these Alcoholic Anonymous places to help people in regards to their cravings and their addictions. But if you go look at it, most of them are taking let's just say a addiction that's not socially accepted, right? Alcohol is accepted, but not to the max, right? But let's say drugs of excess that aren't socially acceptable, and they're basically subbing it for drugs that are socially acceptable: sugar, excess caffeine, excess processed carbs. And so that's the thing. You have to really get to the right balance of what the brain needs. If you have low blood sugar due to low carb, what's the best way to test if you're hypoglycemic? So you can go test your blood sugar, and you can do a fasting blood sugar, a 1 hour, 2 hour, and a 3 hour, and see how your blood sugar looks. If your blood sugar typically around 80 to 95, 80 to 100, fasting maybe 70, 75 to 100. If your blood sugar goes down really fast, or you get really jittery after a meal, that's a good sign. So ideally 1 hour after a meal between 120 and 140, 2 hours after a meal 120 to 100, and 3 hours after a meal back below 100. Some people, their blood sugar can crash, and then you have this adrenaline spike that brings you back up. And that adrenaline spike that brings you back up is what you may see good blood sugar, but you're getting jittery, you're getting nervous, you're getting anxious. So you have to look at the two. You have to parse the two out. And that's why doing that every 3 hours is better, because you can typically catch that blood sugar drop. Okay, Dr. J, how do I fix my metabolism and get my digestion back on track from an eating disorder? So first off, what's the eating disorder? Is it an anorexia where you're just starving yourself, or is it more of you're eating a lot but using bulimia tactics to throw it up? So that kind of matters. And you have to look at the underlying reason why, right? And so when you look at the 6 human needs, a lot of bulimia and eating disorders come from a lack of control in your life. So certainty and uncertainty are the big two human factors out of the gates. Certainty is what gives you consistency. It gives you the ability to feel like you have good habits, good patterns that support you, and also that you have control over your life. People that don't have control over their life, they feel a victim. They're maybe in a controlling relationship. These are people that go to the food as a means to overcompensate for what they have control over to help with that unmet need. So again, we've got to look at those needs and look at ways that we can achieve it via constructive vehicles versus destructive, right? Constructive build you up, destructive fill that need in the short term, but actually make the problems worse in the long run. All right, lots of questions on this topic, guys. I may have to do a part 2 here tomorrow because I got so many questions coming in. What if you're trying to get off opiates? What is the best way, the best nutrition for withdrawals? So opiates, 1, they're highly addictive, so you have to taper off slow. 2, with opiates, you have natural opiates called beta endorphins. These are like our natural painkillers. So you have to make sure you build up your natural opiates. It takes, I think, 19 amino acids to make beta endorphin. So you really want to support good free form amino acids. You want to make sure that you're eating healthy animal products and you're digesting it. You also want to be supporting serotonin and dopamine with good amino acids. And I would also be using something called DLPA, which is D-L-phenylalanine, which does go down the pathway to work on supporting phenylalanine endorphin, beta endorphin. That really can help a lot. And then you can also do things like CBD can be helpful as well. But the problem is, why were you on the opiates to begin with? Most of the time, there's going to be a chronic pain issue, right? And so why did you have that chronic pain issue? So you have to fix the underlying pain that you went on that opiate for to begin with. So if it's a back issue or disc issue or neck issue, you have to do the right things to help decompress that disc, help with tissue inflammation, get the pain down. So you may need liposomal curcumin. You may need some natural, frankincense, boswellia, systemic enzymes taken away from food to get the inflammation down to begin with, because people just typically don't go on opiates, out of the blue unless you're doing fentanyl or heroin. That's something different. But if we're talking opiates from a prescription and they're not illegally prescribed, most of the time it's a chronic pain issue is how you got hooked on them. All right, guys, I answered enough questions here today. I'll be back here tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed today's podcast, or today's video, I should say. Put your comments down below. Give me a share. Let me know what you like best about it, and let me know things that you've done to help with your natural cravings and or addictive tendencies that have kind of helped you get control over your life. All right, guys, Jay here signing off. You guys have a phenomenal day. I'll be back. Take care.